Hi. Greetings. Okay. So today, in reading from our series of reading from the Parinama Method, we're on page 222 and we're at the section of Rite of Passage, the hero's journey. And the next is going to be dreams. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about some practices around how the sixth hub and dreams work together. Because if you remember, like my visceral reaction, if you've been following along, to the question of it's sort of like, what am I ready to see? And so for the sixth hub, one of the things, the qualities of it, is that it is like visual. The revelation and the insights are visual, so they don't have that densification of language yet. So what's possible in terms of what can be accessed is like orders of magnitude stronger, and the exploration is dreams. So dreams are a place where this work can happen, like this processing. It's not even work, I'm just gonna call it like processing, can happen kind of passively. But where I feel like I'm kind of like hesitating because I'm realizing this is like where, yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not gonna say why that, but so the thing, okay, so the thing that I want to like say here is that one of the things that's an important consideration of the sixth hub and this notion of like what am I willing to see here, is that it does need to be invited in, because actually it's being held back intentionally. So part of how we access it is actually like loosening the slack on the mechanisms that we have in place to not see these things. So you might think, and these are adaptations, and so you might think like, well, why would I be blocking myself from knowing these things? And the answer, or unanswer, a answer, is that seeing these things can be disruptive to the status quo and so of your own life. And so one thing I just want to introduce here, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of like this, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit about practicing, because tomorrow I'm going to read from the dream section, but I'm going to do a little sort of like preamble on it or whatever. So why would we be blocking seeing these things? And so, let's see. Okay, I'm going to say something else. If so, this is a stepwise, like in terms of a stepwise function, this is why we don't want to dip into the sixth hub, like out of, it's like, well, which chapter of the book am I going to read and what practice there's a really key. So let's see the words. The words might be a little slow today. I don't know why, but like the laying of the foundation of like the notion and the understanding of the sense of physical security, the ability to actually feel And when it comes to second hub emotional literacy, part of the cultivation is that we're actually being able, like increasing our ability to use our felt sense of recognition of kind of like the buzzy delight, yes, kind of integrity feeling as a divining rod. Because our cognitive functions, and this is part of what we're doing in the sixth hub, have rationalized things to the point, and this is in the Tangle's beliefs, and this might be hard to follow, so just kind of like ride with me if you can, is that there's beliefs now that are like really cooked in. So to try to cognitively make sense alone, to wrestle with these notions, to confront them, to work with them, specifically from a conceptual standpoint, you're going to be like outgunned in a sense. Like this, the fortitude and the strength and the amount of time that these have been like building their momentum is formidable. So part of what the rising through this is like being able to start to trust that feeling of like, yes. And this is the integrity, authenticity feeling, and building the capacity for that. Then, the next in the third hub is the individuation and the confidence and the sense of self as it relates to like existing without like needing external validation, and the sense of wholeness that the third hub brings in our confidence and our sense of self, that our power isn't relative, it's just a fact. It is like an existing integrity. It is the yeah. And then in the fourth hub, where we're getting into our belonging with ourself, like where that division of like, once again, like the love and the connection and the adoration and the cherishing and the interest, and the like, that is also its own freestanding aspect of ourselves. And then and we could talk about the fifth hub, but I'm actually going to go straight into what we're talking about here, which is in the sixth hub now. Without that foundation of those first four hubs specifically, the sixth hub it's incredibly disruptive because it'll be confusing, because what we can see can rattle the notions of what we've believed to keep us safe, can rattle the notions of what we believe we actually like and want. And this is one where, yeah, can rattle our confidence, our sense of self, and also can make us fearful that the things that we're seeing are going to isolate us, leave us further isolated, because a big function. Yeah, I can't believe I'm talking about this. This is very like potent, but it's coming up. It's coming out, so I feel okay about saying it. But the thing is like, so now the adaptation that's related to adolescence is these kind of like it's like more conceptual now. And so in the sort of the processing and the exploration in the sixth hub, um, we're seeing our true selves. And if we've in sort of self-indoctrinated in the name of safety, in the name of like belonging. It's like really at the end of the day safety, but it's just like fear and like like trying to sort of like hack life. The sixth hub is where we can unveil that and get back to the thing that we actually want. Because if you're watching this, you're probably an adult now, and the forcing factors that once informed the need to create these adaptations has been minimized in its exposure to you. So, I mean, as far as like family influences, sure, that can still be real, but or still be, a component, but this is finding something, and the finding in this is if the lower if the like the hubs that preceded this rather are more established, this will actually feel great, and if they aren't, it'll be terrifying. And so let's talk about why there's reasons that we block this. Why there are reasons, because it's not safe yet to know. It's not safe yet to know because the more underlying facets of self are not established enough to withstand the reality. Not reality is terrible. Like the expression of your integrity. In fact, it may even be seen as a threat to your survival because it's coded that way from the first the development of the hub. So it's like coded, like to be who you truly, like to be a true expression of your integrity may have been coded as being threatening, because to be your true self was threatening to others. And that got kind of put back, and then it's kind of like, okay, so I need to minimize this threat and become someone who doesn't evoke this reaction from people. And it's an adapting about like, who am I going to show up with? Who am I going to see myself as? Like this, like who, and even just this is like yeah. So, okay, I'm going to talk about like how to get to this, and before I do, I'm going to talk about like why we block this and how we block it. Some of the ways that we block it are before sleeping, alcohol. You're not going to access these states with alcohol. You're not, and listen, this isn't judging. This is just saying like this, let's talk about consciously doing these things instead of it being another thing that's like below consciousness, or even something we're ashamed that we're doing. So the thing about like, oh, I'm doing this, it's bad. It's not. Just do it consciously. Anything. Just do it. Like being like, yeah, no, this isn't my time for like unpacking this thing. It's not my time for seeing this. Like, that's that like make it a decision, not like just sort of a thing that's happening. Like weed. A lot of stuff with like blue light screens and stuff. Definitely. Even auditory stuff, even music to a certain extent, anything with language in it. If you listen to like people talking while you're sleeping, that'll interrupt it. There's even kind of a weird thing that I'm kind of hesitant to bring up, which is like sugar, which sugar can actually do like a spiking of the sort of like almost like psychedelicness, like the hyperness of it. But then the thing is like then there's like kind of a ick, like it doesn't have a clean burnout. So like when you wake up, it's like the kind of it's not, it is what it is. So here's one. I don't, this isn't a recommendation. I'm just going to talk about what I do. So one of the things is, this isn't an endorsement either, is a magnesium before I sleep. And it's very particular. So it's a wide spectrum magnesium. So there's things like Calm and other like products that I've used before. This has like a deeper reach, and I don't know how to explain why. It's 6 blend advanced formula. Once again, I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying it's what I use. That gives like very kind of potent like relaxation, and for me like access to like more like very deep sleep and dreaming. Um, so one of the things that, and I didn't put this in the book for reasons that I won't get into in this. If you have any questions, ask, I'll answer them, but I'm not going to talk to it right now, is the eye exercises and in the techniques and exercises section here. And one of the things is so like in every hub, we're finding that there's kind of like an aching tension holding in the hub that we're kind of like working to like move out. And, and like jaw, like breathing, like tension, like blah, 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 blah. Do. Here we have the same thing, and that is, it's in the eyes. So I'm going to do a little bit of an eye exercise here, which is like to keep your head facing forward. And so for people who are familiar with yoga, this is like tied to like drishti, like there's the power of like kind of eye movement. But this is not drishti. This is just very basic. But one of the things is to pay attention is to the fact it's like, wow, this is a stretch. Like, so to feel it. So one of the first things is like keep your head facing forward and look up at the ceiling and can feel a stretch in it. Or maybe your eyes are very flexible and you don't. And look back down. And for me, I get like a little bit just dizzy. So kind of like reground, like make sure not to do this stuff while you're like, I don't know, operating a vehicle, I guess. It's like, and now it's to look, I'm going to look to my left. I don't know how that plays out in the camera, but like look, keeping your head forward, look all as much as you can and try to take in as much as you can to your left, and then look down. And then look to the other side. Now we're going to go back up to the top. That for me is really strong. I don't know about anyone else. And then looking at the bridge of your nose with both eyes simultaneously. And then just cast your eyes downward. Take a breath. And let it settle. I mean, that's like for me, I feel like maybe for you, you're like, yeah, nothing. I can't. But for me, the up is the strongest, is where I have the most. Like where when I look up, I can feel the stretch of it. And then when I look forward, it's like I'm a little, yeah, like it's like almost like a little sort of just like slightly dizzy-ish. So part of what this is doing, and this is just me waxing poetic. I don't know. This is just something I don't know. This might even is like, it's like opening this up. So it's like opening up perception. There's even another thing in the full body check-in that I like that is really about like looking and trying to expand your field of perception like as wide as possible, where you're taking in as much as you can from like the sides, above and below simultaneously. You're bringing your attention to like how far the field of vision goes. So you've got that. And quite frankly, it's really strong that like just so to use it judiciously. And I think that one of the things is if you're feeling a response from it, do your thing. Okay. And then there's dreaming. And I'm not going to talk that much more about it. It feels like I'm sort of reached the end of like kind of the talking on it. But one of the things I want to talk about what's possible. So part of the thing about like when we're like opening up the capacity for the processing that happens here in the sixth hub, which involves dreaming, is that in a lot of ways it's almost like clearing up misconceptions. So things can get cleared up. Like an example would be, and it's not uncommon to find layers and like remember things that you're like, wow, like it's like an excavation. Because it's like I think there's kind of a standard canon of memories that we have that are like that we kind of like consider our like memories, and this can reach deeper and pull memories forward that's like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. And to explore those just with curiosity. And, and one of the things that I want to just offer up as a prompt is things that were like related to being bad. Because adolescence is a lot of where the idea of being like a bad kid for doing things that are healthy exploration get incorporated. And it has varying impacts on people as far as the interruption that this causes. But just like doing the okay, this feeling like I'm so the one thing I'm going to just kind of drop on this and then I'm going to move on is that the idea of like being a bad kid, and to the extent that having a caregiver parent have to manage a difficult situation or your bad judgment, or like and bad judgment, like your experimentation of doing something that was like potentially dangerous, which is kind of part of being an adolescent as you're doing things. You're like adventuring, that it's like how that's treated. And not just by your parents, by other people. If you're seen as like a bad influence, or you feel, or you're like, I'm influenced by other people, like whatever. But that can be it. So, okay, that's it for this. Okay, there's that. Yeah, it's strong. It's strong. It's strong. Okay, so we're going to talk about today the rite of passage, the hero's journey. And this is page 222, goes to 223. We have a nice diagram. I mentioned yesterday that this diagram was I think the last thing, the last like interior portion of the book that was created. The preface was was like the last thing I wrote. Technically, like I did also the acknowledgments wound up being last too. They're really bad. They're really bad. Well, they're not bad. It's really something where it's like it would have been really nice for the acknowledgments to be extraordinarily like cooked through and articulated. But there's just the practical matter that was the end of a process that was like, and it was like time bound to get the manuscript to the designer, and also like the kind of like the intensity and the time of how long I'd been working on this was, it's just at this point. It's kind of thing. It's like when you leave it to the last second, it only takes a second. There's that. Remember I'd looked at, one of the books of, a previous boss of mine, and I talked with them about it, their acknowledgments, and they were, like, really well written. Like, we're having that conversation, being like, "Not mine." Um, yeah, because 'cause they're kind of like a love letter, so there's that. Okay, so here, the hero's journey, and I'm gonna show the picture of this in a second. I'm feeling like after that discussion of dreams, I'm feeling a little like, I don't know if I have the strength to pick up the book right now. So, okay, so the rite of passage, the hero's journey. Okay, so the hero's journey or vision quest beckons to us by speaking to our emblem from the pages of books and movie screens. We can experience exploration and adventure from relative safety while we feel a stirring in our unique sense of purpose. Yeah, something that comes up in that is like realizing that this is surprising me right now, the sixth hub, about the excavation that's happening here in my own process and like practicing it right now. And one of the things I think that is almost like when we're recognizing that sense, in these themes in entertainment, or movies or whatever we consume, that the disconnection of that happens in the sixth hub or the adaptation, I would say, makes it harder to access like what our journey is, because we might be like having this kind of this overlay belief about the things that we actually want out of life. And, so it's kinda deep. So in Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell outlined the stages and themes of the personal saga. The journey is widely recognized as a universal set of stages in a rite of passage. See if you recognize any of the stages in your own life in the list below, and look to Campbell's signposts as a guide to what to expect if you heed the call. So one of the things about Joseph Campbell, which you may or may not be familiar with in terms of this aspect of his work, is that he was like, I guess, a philosophical anthropologist, whatever, 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 and that like his work was that he explored cultures like all over the globe, like with a deep, like a fastidious, all-consuming passion, and was just compare and like these comparisons that arose, which were like, here are these like universal themes. So, and one of the things he had brought up, there's some really good myths of light, is an like, I read it as an audiobook. It's actually a book. It's from the Joseph Campbell Foundation, where they've taken his works that were, non-published or academic, I don't know, and they've actually put them into kind of things that people like you and me can read. Is that he talked about, one of the things about our consciousness right now is like we're very like, we take like international air travel as being something that's like, it's just an understood possibility that like in, money notwithstanding and resources and time, which is, kind of a thing that you could be in like Sri Lanka tomorrow kind of thing. And for people like my age who grew up with like no internet and like National Geographic. I remember National Geographic, I got it every month, I think is how often it came out. And there's just this sense of being able to like see a world that was beyond your grasp. And there's something that is like missing, or not missing, like now there really is like not that sensibility about the disparateness of how separate things were once, like how deeply adventurous you would have, someone who, even, like 20, 30 years ago, like how people traveled, was dangerous and risky and unknown and unprotected. And so you had like these photographers out in the jungle and like, just with no English, just it's really incredible. But anyway, so a lot of exposition on this point is that so he came to point out this like fact that cultures that had no conceivably practical way of communicating were all reconciling with the same notions in different ways, in mythologies, in storytelling, in mysticism that was applicable to their environment and their cultures. So one thing I will say as a caveat to that, I read Hero with a Thousand Faces. Most people don't read Joseph Campbell. Like they watch YouTubes about him. And there's like the Bill Moyers things, which are great. I mean, I recommend, and this is about, it's about to, you're not going to expect what's coming at, because you're probably thinking about to like have some kind of shaming thing. It's like people don't read it. Yeah, because it's actually really impassable. I read the book and it was like, I was like white knuckling my way through it. It was really hard to read. And he read it like, I think it's like 60s. He wrote it 50s, 60s. Like he's an older fellow. So early in his career. It's just it's like very academic and it's really like it lacks the charm. I think that he like wound up incorporating, especially in the medium of like spoken, because he was also a professor, that you get from his his end of life kind of presentation. So yeah, don't worry about it. If you're not reading it, don't worry about it. I there was actually a point where I had to put the audiobook on, and this is a hack that I highly recommend for like onerous, very like academic-y, like impassable stuff with a lot of factual information, is to put on, if it exists as an audiobook, to have it as an audiobook and read it simultaneously or read it out loud. Life hack, right? There you go. Okay. So this is going to be a quick little run through with, actually, here we go. We've got the strength. I built the strength here. Yeah, this isn't going to work really well as a in this format, and I'm not going to sweat it. Buy the book. Buy the book. Read it. I read it. So this is like, so if I could put, the thing is here, I'm going to point out here. So you've got the ordinary world and the special world. Just put one of the key delineations of the hero's journey is that there's these two kind of distinct places. And one of the stories Campbell uses to describe the special world is he talks about the Arthurian Knights Templar, the Knights of the Round Table, and that they were presented with this vision of the Holy Grail. And and a reminder that the Holy Grail is kind of this like mystical notion of like this like absolute kind of, achievement, right? Which also could be kind of meta here. But so in the storytelling, the way, and Joseph Campbell talks about how when they came to the woods, when they came to the like forest to enter for their journey, that there was a notion that if they saw a path, that they knew not to take it, so that they would enter in the most impassable area. Like they would find the place in the woods that was the most impassable, and maybe I'm adding like the most impassable, but like they'd find a place that was where they would forge their own path, because the whole notion was if they saw a path, they knew it was somebody else's. And that part of the, an important aspect of the Holy Grail quest is that it is an individual journey. So soak that in that one for a second. So the ordinary life, begins like you're just living your ordinary life. And then you receive the call to adventure, which represents an increase in awareness. And then the natural notion is that you refuse the call. Then so it's like the reluctance to change. So the refusal of the call, back I think I was like giving a little snark about how folks often conflate narrative arc with the hero's journey, where it's like meets a challenge, faces the challenge down, and it's like, ta-da, and it's like, that's not what this is. This is actually about a rite of passage. And like to a certain extent, I guess you could say self-actualization, which is really very much what we're on with this. So it's being called to it. It's having this this sense that I would imagine anyone who's watching this has experienced, is in the process of. And then there's the refusal of it, which is like, yeah, I mean, I think we can also understand that. I don't know that that needs more. Then the teacher appears. So it's the meeting of the mentor. And I think that, and one thing I'll just point out is that this doesn't have to be one person. And also it can be a like theoretically it could be like a Joseph Campbell. A lot of times it is a personified thing, but it doesn't have to be. There's just something where it steps forward. And now with the internet, I think there's like this can happen in a lot of different ways that are kind of, yeah. And so meet the mentor, and there's kind of a activation in that. And so the next stage is to cross the threshold and begin the quest alone. And this is the commitment, and this is the stepping into the forest, out of familiar. And this process, the ordinary life in its like limited awareness, is is where most people remain, because this cycling of being called and like feeling the surge of that, and then feeling the retraction in terms of denial of the call because it's like the fear of what will be lost, kind of call back to what talking about earlier. And then to meet the mentor, you can even recycle back into like, so there's this ebb and flow of readiness. And in many ways, what we're talking about here in Parinama method is how to like build the foundations and the fortitude to be able to actually like hold this like kind of level of consciousness. So very much so. Yeah, actually it is. So crossing the threshold and begin the quest alone. It is done alone. It's done alone. And if you will notice, I will point to this, even though I don't know if it needs to be, is that what we're talking about here in every single hub is that you're finding the quality as a freestanding aspect of yourself. This is not to undermine the importance of connection. It's actually heightening what's possible in connection. But boop. Okay, so the special world. So tests allies and enemies. So you'll have some battles, in the movies. It's kind of like, like Princess Bride just came to mind for whatever reason. Like the fire swamp or whatever. And then you have like a little like kind of gargoyle that you need to outsmart or vanquish or whatever. Like there's just kind of the thing is like there's kind of like an initial, and they feel big at the time, life threatening, but they're like preparations. Tests allies and enemies. Yeah, I'm not going to talk more to that. I think that that's an exploration for to understand. And one of the things is actually realizing that there are people that their level of sort of awareness, self-awareness, consciousness, whatever you call it, is in opposition, and it's validating adaptations. So it strengthens the tangle. And so like that being the notion of like what an enemy is it's not like you against them, it's them actually strengthening the division in yourself. So it's like destroying those notions. Approach the innermost cave. So this is preparing. So you see this. I mean, I'm like all these movies are coming to mind, like Never Ending Story, Princess Bride, all these like Star Wars, whatever, you know, et cetera, which is like the journey to the cave is full, has its like trials and tribulations. And a lot of times I think it's kind of like in that process, you're like building strengths and talents and learning things that are actually going to play out in the like or the ultimate battle. Penultimate, I use that wrong all the time. So approaching it, so it's like, you know, like, oh, there's the big fiery dragon on top of the mountain, the ordeal, the big change, the reward. So it's like, you know, it's like kind of slaying the dragon. And then you get like the treasure. And I'm really intentionally not pointing this to, I'm not speaking in like specifics. I'm not going to explain why. Because there really is. I mean, to the extent that like to go through this. No, I'm not going to talk to it. Okay. Return to ordinary world. This is really important, by the way. And once again, very clear, like if you really understand it, you know, if you come to understand what this is, like why this is not a commonly communicated aspect of the hero's journey, because in a I think like in a very like sort of like economic model, like the idea is like you go, you have the fight, you win the jewels, and it's like fuck and scene. But in the universal notion of the hero's journey, and this goes back to why this is an individual quest in terms of like, yeah, is that after you've that final battle and you like vanquish, you know, it's like a travel, you know, it's like it's described as traveling into the abyss. The hero's journey going into the special world is it's described often as an abyss, like this. I wonder why people refuse to call. What a great pitch. What a great pitch. I think there's like very understandable reason why this is not like fully articulated when people talk about this. But anyway, so in the abyss, you know, you scale the mountaintop, slay the dragon, you have the like the chalice, the revelation, and the thing is yeah, I mean like physical um like the merits gained are, you know, often represented as things that you could understand. This is things that you could understand as why you would actually undergo this from being in the ordinary world, in your ordinary life, being called to adventure and denying it. So the idea that you're leaving with like, you know, boatloads of treasure. So that's actually to me one of the things that like speaks to and this is not said with disdain. It's a very real function. of kind of like how this kind of has to work. But so once you've done that, it's a return to the ordinary world. And I know there's a lot of, it's kind of a fantasy that you leave and that it's like you're now in, like the fantasy world. And you like now live there, but you return, but transformed. And transformed in the sense that the ordinary world's no longer ordinary for you. So the road back, you have that kind of notion, like the person like trudging back, solo, like walking down a, kind of dirt road. There's a resurrection then, a final attempt. It's a final battle, and failure can have a drastic consequences in the like so here's the thing. So the resurrection, the final attempt, it's a final battle. Failure can have drastic consequences in the ordinary world. The hero uses new skills to overcome old obstacles. So this is the thing where it's like you go back into the ordinary world, and what happened in the special world is now used in the ordinary world. But there are parts of that ordinary life. I don't even know how much I want to talk about this. They're just things, yeah. I don't want to like scare anyone. It's just it's like the vestigial things. It's not that it's actually the drastic consequences. It's not fatal. It's drastic consequences to status quo life. Yeah, that's actually probably a really good point. Yeah. Yeah. And that return and that battle, oh yeah, in the real world, it transforms the obstacle and it reveals it to be what it is, which is most of the time nothing. I mean, like very to like crossover, like Darth Vader, Wizard of Oz is probably better, which is like things that seemed, like especially in the notion of like sixth hub adaptation, they seem like massive, impenetrable, true, immovable, whatever. And they're like poofed. And it's drastic. It's liberating, but it's drastic. Because there is like an aspect of having to come to like re-reconcile life under new terms, which is, it seems like one of those things that you'd like objectively want, but it's, it's a process. So the return to society with the merits achieved through the journey, mastery, the hero returns in a changed state. Any issues with ordinary world characters are resolved. The hero uses newly acquired knowledge to great effect. Yeah. Beautifully put. I mean, there's one thing that I want to kind of point to as well, which was that Campbell talked about how there's no, like, so one of the things like in the typical like arc of like a movie and how hero's journey is portrayed is that there need like in a separation from that is that there's no guarantee that the merit of your journey will be recognized. And that's something I think that's also like commonly not spoken of, is to understand that that's not. And it's interesting now when I look at it in the context of TPM, which is like, yeah, you don't need it anymore. Like the validation of people seeing it and being like, oh, that's like, wow, you really like did something special here, or like just that, because that the illusion of that need is gone. Yeah. And something much stronger has been replaced by it. And it's interesting because sort of like sort of in the spiraling thing is like in that like like in like the like recognition, reconciliation, whatever it is, of the like no longer needing these like validations in terms of other people seeing something to make it true. It winds up kind of becoming like it creates like sort of a charisma where it actually happens just passively, but not as a dependency state of people seeing your like seeing what like because they can't really see it. There's a quality that people that or not people, but some folks will recognize in it. But it's not like it's not the reward. The reward is, it's like going back to this whole thing where it's like, you had like the Wizard of Oz, it was in you all along. It's like this state is actually this, it's you. Like it's you. The thing, it's like the whole thing about the Holy Grail, which is like, what is that? What's the Holy Grail? Well, the Holy Grail, it's never like expressly, it's like it's a golden chalice. It's great treasure. It's just because I think so. This is something I like. I'll try to like express my understanding of is that to enter into this process, it's not there's no real way to comprehend what the real reward could possibly be because it is so foreign. So it's presented in sort of like the language of the state that enters into the quest, so to speak. So it's like the idea that's like, oh, great levels of respect and great treasures, and like this is the reward, like great riches, great, and it's actually oddly enough not that doesn't happen, like that kind of sort of happens, but it isn't the reward that's experienced. And a lot of what we're talking about like throughout all of this is that like the journey of this, it's like the transformation, like even getting rich, I'll say, like even like acquiring wealth, there's this opportunity to become a person that has capabilities, and those capabilities are really the reward, and that there's these secondary aspects of of like what was gained in the quest or the conquest. And that's something I think that's also I don't know, I guess that's like should potentially like sort of be encouraging in this model, which is that it's kind it's like you come out, but the thing that you recognize and is like the merit of the process is not what you entered thinking it would be, yet you still kind of get it. It's just not as like you just recognize it for what it is. And that's how it has to work, is that you have to know to just want, and this is something also, actually, this is a good one. Like there's sometimes there's like disdain about wanting to become like rich or wanting physical accomplishments, and it's like, oh, what you really should want is to change the world and save like world hunger, and like this kind of thing where it's like that's not elevated enough. And there's just really something to being able to like explore into the thing that you sense want for just enough to kind of kind of like move a process forward in terms of the exploration and even like the creation of a life. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but that's all it is. So, all right. Okay. So we did it. Hero's journey, rite of passage, and tomorrow's dreams. And we talked a lot about dreams today. So those exercises. So if you really feel super adventurous to do the exercises from earlier, which is the eye exercises, considering sort of like elimination of like stuff that's going to interfere with dreaming. But like back to the caveat on that, it's like really want to make sure that you want to know, and you want to make sure that it's not going to be disruptive to have things revealed as far as what is what it is, because back to this hub, it's like, what am I willing to see? And spoiler alert, the thing that's hidden from you is that you're really extraordinary. And there's like this, like, yeah, yeah, spoiler alert, everything. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's and like life as a very like fulfilled, like expanded, enlivened thing. And this is where Six Hub really comes in, can take a very different like it can be like the way it actually can exist in integrity is like fully like sustainable, could look very different than what you've adapted yourself. We adapted ourselves in adolescence to believe we wanted, or what was like a life that would keep us, um like the what's the thing we should want. And this is where we're reclaiming the thing that we want and finding it and using feeling to get there. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow, and any comments I will answer. And let's see, any interaction I love. uh I love any, like, it's very encouraging. Any liking or commenting or anything is, yeah, take it, be careful about encouraging me. That's one thing. Yeah, don't like this. Don't like it if you want to send me a message that you don't encourage me. God. Okay, all right, that's a wrap. But anyway, yeah, I'm really happy to show up here, and it is absolutely out of love, um, sending love to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. All right, bye for now.